Hello again. Now, it's 23 years since the Nelson Mandela Foundation was established and is still standing strong. It was founded when the former president, Nelson Mandela, left office in 1999. Its main focus is to keep the memory and legacy of the founder, Nelson Mandela, in the public imagination. The foundation also pursues matters of social justice, poverty and inequality. To look back on the legacy of the foundation, its history and its plans going forward, I'm joined now in studio by the CEO, the boss man himself, Sello Hatang. Mr. Hatang, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon.
And I guess congratulations are in order. 23 years on. I thought let's begin here very briefly because of where you've been. Why was this foundation founded way back in 1999? What was the purpose of setting it up?
You know, the story is told. Zelda used to tell us the story of how Madiba would call what were effectively his former staff members who were in the presidency. Call them and say, can you do this for me, book this flight? And after a while, they were reminded, he was reminded to say, actually, we are no longer your employees. We're working for the new guy. It was people like Professor Jakes Gerwel who then advised Madiba to establish this office in order to help him with everything that was his passion, stuff that he couldn't do while he was...
And the key goals that were envisioned at the time?
So stuff that, infrastructure, to help government with building schools. Remember, Madiba would go into a rural community and he would then call CEOs of these big companies and say, I'd like you to help with build the school, so infrastructure development, in order to pull people's lives up. Issues of health care, HIV/AIDS, which Madiba regretted that he hadn't done enough to deal with HIV/AIDS while he was president. So that was the work that we did. In there was also the memory work when it comes to Madiba's archives, the Center of Memory. And that's the kind of work that we did. In 2007, rather, maybe I should also mention that we also did bursaries, helping with scholarships for those who couldn't afford to go to university. All those were done by Madiba from the Nelson Mandela Foundation.
Now, looking back over the last 23 years, has it been a successful journey? Has it been a meaningful journey? Have you achieved some of those goals?
You know, one of the things that you had earlier on the wall was Nelson Mandela Day. I don't know if you remember in Moyane how Mandela Day started. It started in two cities. It was in New York and Johannesburg. This was 2009. Today, it's in over 100 cities, over 100 countries, rather, mark Mandela Day. If that's not success, I don't know what success looks like.
And it's and Mandela Day is an international day.
It's an international day. Not only was it declared by the that we did something here, but it was declared by the UN under Ban Ki-moon, as Secretary General of the UN at the time. I want to also pay homage to DERCO, because DERCO was very instrumental in helping the foundation to get that process through. So that was one big major success that we had. Then we had those concerts that were helping, 46664 concerts. Remember those concerts that we had globally? Those concerts used to raise awareness and funding for HIV/AIDS courses. They funded projects across the continent, in fact, not just on...
Hopefully, after the pandemic, those concerts will go on into the future?
I'm hoping that the board will look at it again, because they were stopped in 2009, 2010.
Oh, long before the pandemic.
Long before the pandemic, because they became too...
The reason I'm asking that, because of the impact they've had, and people are hungry today for such interactions. Mandela was a truly global icon from what you've just said. I mean, Madiba was that, the data was that, and he stood for good values, you know, including transparency, perseverance, and resilience. When you look at South Africa today and at that legacy, do you think it's still relevant and we can rely or lean on it in order to resolve some of our problems today?
I think Madiba's legacy is more important today than even while he was alive. We are faced with a country that's fractured, a country where politicians have lost their way in terms of leading our country, where people are looking for someone who they can then say, this is a person who can then take us forward as a nation. And I think if anything, when you look at levels of poverty and inequality, How Madiba would think of restructuring our economy to make sure that it helps the poor. And how he tried to unite us even at moments where we thought it was impossible. Of course, we are still a forgetful nation, Ntate Moyane. And one of the things that I'm hoping that we can still do is to always refer back to that legacy. Because in a time like this where hope is fading so fast, you want to be reminded that here's a man that when he was just 7 years in prison, he still held on to hope, as per the letter that I once showed you at the Nelson Mandela Foundation.
Now, that Center of Memory is a very beautiful place. I mean, that's one of the achievements, and you've used it. You host events there. You have leaders from everywhere. But what stands out for me from a global leadership perspective is the annual lecture, the Nelson Mandela lectures that are held. What are the lessons out of that? I mean, the biggest one that I remember was at the Wanderers with the former president of the United States, Barack Obama.
You know, this year we will be hosting the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, and she will be looking at climate change, trying to make sure that Madiba's legacy is relevant to today's struggles. Climate change is one such. That's why we're taking it to Durban, where people were flooded and their homes destroyed. Over 40 South Africans died there. So we're dealing with that. But in the past, this is the 20th anniversary, by the way, of the annual lecture. In the past lectures, if you look at Thomas Piketty, he addressed the issue of poverty and inequality. Today we launched, we have a project on early childhood development, because he said for us to break the back of intergenerational poverty, you must start them young, to make sure that education...
We all know about the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund and how close children were
to Madiba's heart.
To him.
Yeah, so that's why we then do early childhood development work and help develop lives of people in terms of using that vehicle of Mandela.
Yeah, what I've observed is that you as a foundation, besides these leadership discussions and the legacy and the Center of Memory, you also deal with current issues like hunger. You've got a program that addresses that. Each
One Feed One is that program. And thanks again, you were one of the people who supported us hugely in 2020. You and your family, in fact, supported us in a big way in 2020. 2020, we traveled, just that 1 year, we traveled over 25,000 kilometers around the country, feeding over 100,000 families.
And this was during a very difficult time with the pandemic.
Very difficult. And this was under level 5 lockdown, hard lockdown. And I think what it revealed then is that the struggles that were being faced by people because of the pandemic was not just because of the pandemic, but more than that.
Yeah.
It was systemic.
And I mean, you had the likes of Sia Kolisi also supporting the Each One Feed One program. So you really went and got people across different sectors of society to engage. How important is it for the foundation to do your programs in that fashion?
You know, one of the things that we miss out on as a country is collaboration. Through collaboration with organizations such as Old Mutual Foundation, Imbumba Foundation, Kolisi Foundation, we're able to move mountains, basically. And I think if we are to bring in the private sector to work with the NGOs and government, we will then help many South Africans pull them out of poverty that they have. But we don't collaborate enough as people.
So you've said that part of your vision, when one looks at it, is about learning from the past in terms of Madiba's legacy, and himself, he used to rely that on it. But when you look ahead now, what still needs to be done?
I think we need to ensure that people realize that we don't need the leader. You don't need a messiah to save you in the form of another Nelson Mandela. And the day that a nurse can see themselves in a public hospital as a leader in wherever they are, the day that a teacher can see themselves while teaching to be taking the baton of leadership, a day that a person who has something to offer. That's why this year we said when we were doing Mandela Day, we said do what you can with what you have where you are. Because if each one of us think like that, we will be able to break the back of poverty, inequality, racism, xenophobia, and gender-based violence. All social ills will then be dealt with and will give hope where it's needed.
And Madiba's legacy going forward globally, the rest of the world, how do you see that? Are you planning on new partnerships at the international level?
We will be unveiling, almost said it, you almost caught me out there. So we will be unveiling a project pretty soon. We'll be unveiling a project pretty soon that will go global, where we're looking at global leaders who have shown the light using Mandelas Legacy to say this is what they learned from Madiba and this is what we
Are you going to take young people along with you, Mr. Hatang? Because the future is, the youth is the future.
In fact, at least half of the people that we are interviewing are young people. So I think that if we are to do anything, we must pull them along and actually listen to them, because those are the people who listen to slogans that are used by adults, and then they don't progress the legacy, but they damage it through things like saying Madiba is a sellout, without actually learning what the legacy can teach us.
So you can unpack that. Thank you very much for your time and some of the reflections this afternoon here on Today on eNCA. Of course, as we're looking back at the 23 years since the Nelson Mandela Foundation was established, that's way back in 1999. That was the last year that Tata Madiba was the president of the Republic of South Africa, and the foundation is still standing strong. And by the sound of it, from what Mr. Sello Hatang was saying just now, it's going to be continuing with interesting programs, not just locally, but also globally. And the youth will feature very prominently in those programs going forward. Now,